Welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast with your host, Alvin Bonds II. Join us each week as Alvin explores the relationship between leadership and families by interviewing leaders in different fields all over the world. Alvin believes that the success of tomorrow's leaders begins with the success of today's families.
Hello, and welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast. I am your host, Alvin Bonds II, and this is episode 9. Today, I interview PeiLan Ku. PeiLan lives in New York City, and she has her own consulting business called Orchid Consulting. You can discover PeiLan at her website. It's orchid-consulting.com. That's orchid-consulting.com. Before we get to my interview with PeiLan, I'd like to talk just a moment about culture. You will discover from my interview with PeiLan that she describes her family as a transnational family. And she says that just means her family lives in more than one country. And for PeiLan, her family comes from Taiwan. Her father travels frequently from Taiwan back to the United States. PeiLan's mother is a Chinese language and history teacher, and her father is an artist and art professor. You will hear more about PeiLan's journey in my interview with her, but I invite you to take a moment and just reflect on culture. Culture is broad, and it means several different things to different people. You think of a northern culture, people who live upstate, New York, Chicago, the states that are northern. You also look at a southern culture, people from Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, states that are in the southern region. And there's different dialects, there's different enunciations. One culture says pop, where another culture says soda. We look at who do we speak with when we're walking on the street? Do we say hello? Do we ignore the person? Do we walk past them? Do we stop? Do we smile? All of that is influenced by culture. There can be culture in the same neighborhood. One neighborhood, one house could have a specific cultural mindset, whereas the next door neighbor has a different set of cultural values or norms. And culture ranges from what time we eat dinner, or who all eats dinner together. Or it can be who decides what movie we go to, who decides who pays the bills, who decides anything. All of that is influenced by culture. And one of the things that PeiLan discusses in her interview is how her Chinese culture influences her and her family, as well as their interactions. You have her family who are living in the United States, but has Chinese heritage and Chinese cultural backgrounds and influences. And that affects how we raise our children. It affects our marriages. It affects our relationships. It affects friendships. And unfortunately, I don't think we as a nation, as a culture, as a people, pay attention enough to cultural influences and norms. Your mother's background affects how she parents you. Your father's background or cultural upbringing affects how they parent you. And you can have two different parents from different cultural norms or cultural backgrounds, and they come together and try to raise children in a blended, or there may even be a dominant or passive cultural norm in that home. But what happens when you have a child that grows up with a different cultural norm than that of their parents? And this happens very frequently. So you have potential for conflict in the family. You have potential for conflict in relationships. There's potential for confusion. There's potential for hurt feelings. There's lots of potential for for discord in our relationships. It is important to look at that and to see how much of our lives are influenced by culture and how we influence culture with how we think, how we dress, all of that. It blends together. PeiLan is the founder and principal consultant of Orchid Consulting. PeiLan, from her consulting firm, operates out of New York City, Taipei, Taiwan, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Santa Monica, California. It's an honor and a privilege to interview PeiLan for this podcast. Well, PeiLan, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Tell us what you do.
So currently I am kind of like launching my own, I call it a consulting firm, but it's really just kind of like an artistic branch of everything that I do.
Okay.
And so my focus is really dance, art, and art history, and fashion in the sense of understanding image and personal image, and I want to say commercialized image.
Okay.
It's a little bit. So I have my own little thing going on. That's the only reason why I have my own little kind of thing going on, because I just do kind of. I love doing things that interact with people.
Yes.
But my forte has been always dance, art, and fashion.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit tricky on what exactly I do, and that's why people get really confused verbally, if I could explain to them verbally. But currently, I am a teaching artist, and I teach dance, and I focus on dance. And then I'm also working with an artist and his gallery. So we're setting up for a show, a big 3-day art festival.
Okay.
And that's my 2 big projects now.
Yeah.
My 2 big gigs now.
And the unique thing about what you're describing is you've discovered a gap, or you're not a one-size-fit-all kind of gal, and you've just collected a bunch of things that work and that fit together that wouldn't ordinarily be laid out together, and that's what you've created. And I looked at your website, orchidconsulting.com, and I love how you describe your family and your upbringing. Can you tell us about that?
I grew up in New York City, and my father is a retired artist and an art professor. My mother is a Chinese language and kind of like history, culture teacher.
Yeah.
So we grew up in New York City, kind of gutting out whatever the city has to offer. So for instance, my father was an artist. I mean, even now in New York City, it's the place to be if you are an artist.
Yeah.
If you're an inspiring art. And we didn't have the normal upbringing. Now it's like everybody's going to like Disneyland, and families going on cruises, and they're going, I don't know, they're just traveling a lot, but seeing like certain sightsees, like certain very specific landmarks. We would really, if we did travel, we would just go straight to like a museum, or we would just walk around and look around.
Okay.
So I came into this like very artistic background, but it was very academically driven.
Okay.
Because a stereotypical Chinese like education is the most important. Even though my father, even though he was an artist, I don't know if he really, because it's a hard path. It's a very, very hard path to go through.
Yes.
When I was growing up, and my mom was very, how do you explain? She she wasn't that supportive of me doing the arts.
Okay.
Even though she married an artist and an art professor, and she actually loved the arts herself, she put me into all these classes and everything like that. So my family really set the foundation for me to kind of become more of a technical person in the beginning that just loved the arts. And then as I started to grow up, or, I always went back to the arts. I tried to kind of I was a rebel when I was very young. I dropped out of school when I was 15.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I wasn't just rebellious, but I just knew my life wasn't, going to be normal.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but I have now at the age of 40, I'm looking back, I'm really thinking about, how I got to this phase in my life, and it really was because of the fact that I was so defiant when I was younger. And it was because that I just wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I really, at the end. But my parents and my family set the foundations for me to kind of fight back, do what I want to do, stand up for what I really think is good. That kind of created this path for me to go into the arts, but more on the educational side, more on the teaching side, than a full-blown artist myself.
Yeah.
I love choreography. I do that, but, I'm a teaching artist, I think, at heart. I teach before I create the art, if anything. And that is definitely because of my family. They just didn't let me do what I wanted to do when I was younger. And that was the fight that I always had. But that fight drove me to kind of figuring out that if I can't find something that I want to do in life, I got to create it myself. And therefore, Orchid Consulting was kind of
Yeah, you went against the grain. Your parents had this idea of a box for you that they wanted you to fit in. And maybe it was because of concern or fear or love or all the above. But
yes.
like you said, you felt a calling from the arts, and you couldn't deny it. You couldn't press ignore on that call. And even as a child, you pursued it up until this point. That's pretty phenomenal.
It's hard, though. It was hard. And I always tell a lot of my students that really do, it's not an easy path. I don't make much money, and I keep on working. You just hope one day, I don't know, something will happen. Where you do make a phenomenal, life for yourself. Where you don't have to think about anything like money or whatever. But it's a hard path.
Yeah.
Even I really stress to a lot of my students that because your ego gets hit so hard.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, when you go on this kind of everybody knows the stars, right? Everybody knows, but there are so many, thousands of millions of artists that don't, nobody knows.
Yes.
I feel like if you're a true artist, you'll just keep on going.
That's right.
Keep going. You gotta pick yourself up. And I got hit hard by, my family. It's, strangers can't really hurt you as much.
That's right.
If your family doesn't support you, it could really hurt you. But I came from a really good family, though. it's like a sinner. No, I'm not. A sinner.
What keeps you pursuing this passion? And you mentioned right now you may not make a lot of money, but you're doing what you're passionate about. What motivates you every morning to get up and do what you do?
Okay, this is where I think I'm going to sound really kind of artsy-fartsy. I allow myself as a human being to feel every single emotion that I feel.
Yeah.
I allow myself to do that. If I feel jealous, I allow myself to do that. And if I feel sad, I allow myself to be sad. If I feel angry, I allow myself to be angry. And don't get me wrong, this was a process.
Yeah.
This is a process that I had to go through, and then now that I'm a little bit older, now I can tell you how I'm doing this. But you have to allow yourself to kind of go through all of these things. And then when you go through them and you get out of it, like you get out of your funk and you get out of your depression and you get out of your anxiety and you get out of your nervousness or whatever, all those negative things.
Yeah.
And you're able to control that. That is, to me, what self is about. Like, you know, what being human is about.
Yeah.
And when I'm having a bad day at work, which I have a lot of, by the way, I figure out how bad it is. But I really, really just allow myself to, like, you know, just get fucking pissed off and, like, yell and just, you know, I'm not very violent, but I allow myself to pour my feelings out. And then for some odd reason, for me at least, that point just, you know, releases me. And then I'll think about it. And then again, that process, this whole entire process was like, you know what? I've gotten over that.
Yeah.
I could get over it. I mean, it's kind of like you're coaching yourself.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, it's like am I done? Am I really done? When I was younger, you know, when I was in my 20s, definitely in my 20s, you would always cry to somebody.
Yeah. And
you would always tell somebody. And I don't have anybody to go to a therapist. You know, I had to figure it out. It's hard. You really, really have to, like, let your vulnerability go.
Yeah.
When I go through all of this, and at the end, it's like, oh, okay, do I still want to do this when I'm down? And everybody's just, you know, I just feel like everybody's just kicking me.
Yes.
You know, do you really want to do it? Because this is your choice.
You're right.
Go on or to not, or to quit and not to pursue it. And I have done that before. And I have gotten, you know, a normal job. Yeah, I've gotten a 9-to-5 job. I've done an office job before. And it just drove me crazy.
Yeah.
It just drove me crazy. So I just decided, as I got older, I don't care what I do, I just need to do it.
That's right.
Like, I just need to do it. And if that's dance, and if that's art or image consulting of some sort, then I'm going to do it. It's not even the drive for the art. It's just like, do I want to do it?
Yeah.
It's like self. It's really about myself. It's kind of selfish, but it's like, whatever.
But you're right. And I love how you talked about giving yourself permission to feel, giving yourself permission to be human. That's profound, because many of us don't allow ourselves an opportunity to feel, and we become numb. But I love that you are embracing that.
Yeah. But you know what? It wasn't that easy, though. It was just at my low point where I was just like, what am I doing with myself? So that, it is profound, but it's that journey that I had to go through to figure it out.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. I'm actually living back at home with my mother. I am married still, but when my husband and I would come back to New York, he lives with his dad, spends time with his dad. I live with my mom. I don't want to say technically I spend time with my mom because we can't stand each other. But, yeah, we just can't. It all started when I got out of high school. But, you know, we just had an argument. And, you know, and I just realized, like, you know, did I want to argue with my mom? Maybe. You know, I could have been an instigator. But do I not? And that just keeps on going and going, figuring out. In the past, it was just like, I didn't know how to figure it out. Mm-hmm. You know? And then it was just like going on and going on and going on and going on. Like, we would just argue and argue and argue. And we still do that. But now I just realized, you know what? Do I really want to argue with you? Sometimes I don't. Yeah. And I'll say something that I literally would never say. You know, like, you just don't want to have an argument. You swallow your pride. And then you say something completely different. Yeah. And it actually sets you to that, oh, wait, I really didn't have the argument with my mom. And that, I swear to God, that's exactly the same thing that I take to work. Yes, yes. We have to choose our battles. We have to choose, you know, am I going to say this because I know it's going to piss someone off?
or, can I hold on it, sit on it for a while and just deal with my stuff? You're exactly right. I'm interested in knowing how your family, how your upbringing has helped develop your own individual style of leadership.
It's because at such a young age that I fought those battles and I had those arguments and I had those disagreements. Just insane arguments. Like, my mom has recorded me yelling to the top of my, instead of like trying to calm me down, she instigates it and she records me.
Wow.
Like, that's how crazy my mom is. Right. Like, I read a little bit of the Tiger Mom, like Him of the Tiger Mom book, and I'm like, oh my God, that's smothering. Like Tiger Cub compared to my mom. But she wasn't a strict mother. She just wanted to do things her way.
Sure.
And in the Chinese culture, teachers, honestly, they even top parents. The teacher is the one to go to, and that's what I grew up with. And my dad was living in Taiwan when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm. So
he was actually just coming back and forth from Taiwan to America like 2 or 3 times a year. Out of all those arguments, out of all those, it got really bad, because I come from a really highly educated family.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have that much money, but we're really highly educated.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I dropped out of high school, it was just my grandmother and my grandfather hardly ever gives us advice. They were like, what the heck is going on? And the only reason why I'm saying all of this, too, even with my situation with my mom and my dad's side of the family now, there was another situation. And I'm thinking about that, like, why are we so strong? Why am I able to, come back home and just feel like nothing happened?
Yeah.
Not nothing happened, but just, still be able to, calm down and whatever.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that, they didn't have anything to do with it, because they definitely had said, you better leave the house now, or I could have ran away a long time ago and, never come back or whatever. And even now, especially now, with my mom saying, you got to get out of my house. And I'm just like, no. It's really because of the fact that I still hung around.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's so crazy, but it's like if somebody, really, kind of, you have an argument or whatever, everybody just, everybody's always like, you gotta leave, you gotta calm down, you gotta leave. A lot of the most heated arguments, I never left. Like, if my mom blew up, if my dad blew up, my grandparents blew up, my aunts and uncles, I even had fights with my aunts and uncles in my life. I literally stood there, just took it.
What kept you?
I don't know. It was weird.
What kept you there? Because you could have left and not had to deal with the wrath, but you stood kind of in the fire, if you will. How did you make that decision to do that?
I think when I was younger, I was just scared.
Yeah.
I think as you get older, because it's, my reasons of staying are very always, I feel like they're always different. As bad as my arguments were, as bad as my jobs were, I always, and I don't know if it's, luck or, someone looking after you or whatever. Again, it's that that it's not going to be as bad.
Okay.
I never got into, and I don't know if it's because I have been kind of privileged in that sense. I never got bad where, I got physically hurt.
Sure.
Although people always say that, verbal abuse is worse than physical abuse, but never got that bad. For me, it got bad, but I just felt like I could take it.
Okay.
And I knew that somebody else was always there to support me or something. Because I knew they loved me. I know what love is. I absolutely do. I came from a family that was just so wonderful. It was just it was so art-based, and it was unconventional from any other, when I'm talking to my friends that kind of are the same, even if they're highly educated in the same way as my family is, socioeconomically or whatever, similar. In that sense, they never had a father that was an artist that was going back and forth from Taiwan and America, and they never had a mother that was very prideful, living in New York City, and, you know, was really like a single mom.
Yeah.
You know, and she had her own, knitwear business, and she actually was also a long, long time ago, a Chinese radio, kind of like advice, family advice folk, even though I was dropped out of school. It was like telling a story not about our life, just about a life that she might have wanted.
Yeah.
And I just feel, so I knew what love was. You know, I knew what love was, and I just don't think I was scared enough I was scared of leaving. And I could kind of see maybe that's what, the abuse, right? You're like, there is a little somewhat of an abuse going on here where I just never left. But I think for me, it was just because I knew somebody loved me.
Okay.
I did. Like, if I'm having an argument with my mom, I absolutely knew my grandfather and my father actually would take my side. Even if they didn't want to take my side with my mom yelling at me at the end of the argument, and they wouldn't, and they wouldn't stop us sometimes from, my mom and I arguing. They would actually let my mom say her piece or whatever, and then at the end of the argument, they would come upstairs to my room and they would like give me a hug, and they would just say like, your mother loves you, we all love you, let's go down and eat now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, okay, fine. It was so much. I mean, it's not as deep as people think it really is for me, though. But I know that's because, again, I know what love is. And again, that has to do with a lot of what you're talking about. It really is because of the foundation of my family, and how I was brought up. And I was really brought up in a very happy household. And
that's amazing. A lot of families experience, both verbal and physical abuse. And, while some of that you experienced as a child may be called verbal abuse, you knew you were loved, whether by your mother, father, uncles, you knew there was love in the house. And it also sounded like there was also a level of respect and almost an ironic sense of empowerment, allowing your mother just to kind of vent, say her piece, but also empowering you to still do whatever you wanted to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, you know what? I never thought about it that way, empowerment. I like that word. Yes, it did. It did. It really did. It really did. When I would see, like a kid, let's say if they're in my dance class or something like that, they get in trouble, or I turn around all of a sudden, he's like, play hitting somebody, and I'm just like, I keep on telling you guys, there's no touching in my dance class, unless I say so,
Yeah.
And because it always, they're play fighting, and all of a sudden somebody
That's right. Tries, That's right.
Because it gets out of hand, right? And the thing is, I see that. I mean, that's a very small portion of that. But when you see, because something else already happened before that, before your sight, right? Before what you actually saw.
Yes.
That process, again, is always something that I think it has a lot to do with me understanding so much about how I argue.
Mm.
Right? And then again, it comes back to I let myself argue. So I'm always constantly teaching my kids, you decide for yourself whether or not you want to do that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want me yelling at you and putting you separate, then you got to decide for yourself. And that is, I love that word. I never said that word to them, but I was like, that is your choice.
Yeah.
That is your choice. But that choice is the empowerment part.
You're right.
That choice is the empowerment part. Even at the young kids. I mean, people always say, like, you can't say, well, let me say this. I worked for early childhood education for about 3 years in public schools and private schools, and pre-K in Las Vegas. Southern Nevada, so Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
And we work with a lot of Head Start programs, which is government funded, and it's usually they put the mother and the child on, kind of like these programs to encourage them to work together.
Yes.
So So these parents actually had to take some of my classes, get the credit to get help, like either food stamps or Medicaid, or both. You know, we're teaching at a very young age, like 3 to 5 years old. And I treat the 3 to 5 year olds the same exact way I treat my 15-year-olds. And that part is what you just said. I'm going to use that word from now on. That part is empowerment.
Yeah.
I let my 3-year-olds choose a lot of behavioral issues.
Yes.
I let my 3-year-olds choose. And whenever parents tell me, that's just the way a 5-year-old is, that's just the way a 2-year-old is. In my head, honestly, I might usually take my class, but in my head, I'm really, really saying, no, they can choose. I've taught hundreds of kids at the age of 3 to choose. They don't choose always right, but they chose.
And those lessons, they're perpetual. They, you know, even from an early childhood perspective, you're planting those seeds that will grow into, you know, adults. And they will continue to make choices that affects their lives and affects the lives of their family. And that's what you're doing, and that's what leadership is.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's funny, though? I never liked to be the leader. I actually, if you ask my husband, and this is what annoys the crap out of him. And this is probably why I don't make that much money, but now I'm doing my own thing, so now I have to.
Yeah.
If you give me a job and apply for it, right, and you chose me, if you give me the job and I love the job, I could stay at that job forever.
Okay.
I could. It didn't happen that way for me because of work. I'm like traveling constantly back and forth. Now I have to go back to Taiwan to see my dad because he's in a nursing home because he had a stroke. So I'm traveling a lot, and so I had to, I still wanted to work, so I had to build my own career. I just said I could do this anywhere. I could teach dance anywhere. You teach art history, art appreciation anywhere. That's what really made me kind of like. But if you ask my husband, I really don't like being like the leader. Like I really don't. If I could just get paid just to do what I love, fine with it. And I had that job in Vegas. I was like, please let me just come back here once in a while to teach. But I was like, and they're like, well, no, you can't. I was like, I need you here, like, during school time. And I was like, oh, all right, Kim. But if I could, I would have just stayed there. I would have just stayed at that job forever and just retired as a teaching artist assistant center. Only if Kim Russell was there, though, because she's the best supervisor I've ever had in my life.
And,
but I'm very happy.
I was going to mention that there's a difference between a manager or a supervisor and a leader, and it sounds like you've been all of those, but what comes naturally for you is leadership. When you lead your classes, when you conduct your classes, you're leading. And it's just a matter, it sounds like, of developing your consulting business to where you're getting paid for what you do, what you're passionate about.
Oh. Yeah, I guess so, huh? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that is just like, okay, what's really, okay, I mean, maybe this is why I never wanted to be delivered. I never wanted to have the responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility. And I think that's where I'm just irresponsible. I don't know. It is. I just feel like if I am the leader, then I just have to, you have to care about a lot of people. I don't know.
Do the people that you see, do you care about them, the kids that you teach?
Yeah, I do.
I appreciate about leadership. It's not one size fits all, nor is it concrete. I think it's very fluid, and some of the best leaders don't necessarily identify as a leader, even though that's what they do. And it sounds like that's what you've been doing.
Oh, that is really nice. I agree with you. I really agree with you with the word empowerment. I will say that. I'm going to definitely take that on my classes now.
Yeah, and you're definitely doing that. And I wonder how do you balance your career and what you're building with your family? You mentioned your husband. How do you balance your time with him? Be sure to join us next week for part 2 of my interview with PeiLan Ku. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to subscribe as well as providing a rating and review. Every week, I will interview a different leader and invite them to share with us their views and perspective on the relationship between leadership and family. Be sure to visit my website. It's www.alvinbonds2nd.com. That's ALVINBONDSII.com. Have a great day.